let's get a voice note from Paul.
Hi, Mark. Paul from Stoke here, in relation to your caller Just, who said that he emailed his MP and they wanted his address. I did the same. I emailed my MP, and the police knocked on my door yesterday, counter-terrorism police, to tell me that what I'd said to him regarding the Grooming gang scandal was a very fine line between committing a crime and not committing a crime. Just be careful with these MPs, especially the Labour ones, folks.
Blimey. That is extraordinary. I'd like to hear more from that on that, Paul. Could you perhaps let us know what it was that you wrote? Because I think people will be very concerned to hear that. You've sent a letter to your MP asking for information, or perhaps urging that the MP gets involved in a grooming gang vote, possibly that they should vote for a grooming gang inquiry, and you get visited by the police? Seriously? Let's talk to Lord Tariq Ahmad, British businessman, Conservative life peer. Lord Tariq, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Good to meet you.
Yeah, good to talk to you. I'm sorry I can't give you more details on that note from Paul, but it sounds a bit disturbing that you write a letter to an MP. We had one caller earlier who said they were asked for their address when they did that. He's saying that he got a visit from the police on some kind of counter-terrorism investigation.
Yeah, I fundamentally, it's flawed, isn't it? I mean, if someone is concerned about something, the police are there to protect everyone. And if someone is highlighting a particular issue in a particular part of the country, it needs to be fully investigated. And these calls for a national inquiry, which I do support, because I think what has happened, you can do both things in parallel. What's there already, implement it, and stop calling out people being racist because they're concerned about these abhorrent and vile crimes which are taking place and are affecting young, vulnerable girls.
Yeah. No, but I mean, certainly the inference I got from Paul anyway on that was that the police were not investigating the crime. They were investigating whether he had committed a crime by writing a letter.
Yeah, well, I think he needs to follow that up. I mean, like you, I don't know the full instance of that. And I hope he does take it up with his MP. MPs are there. As you said in your introduction, you know, I served in government for a good period of time, the last 12 years in the Conservative administration. And I regarded my time in the upper house as being someone who was representative of the whole country. But MPs are there specifically to serve their constituents, irrespective of who their constituent voted for. And I hope he will follow up with his MP.
Yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot of what I would regard as bluster around this issue, isn't there? You know, some people are being accused of sort of, you know, ratcheting up the grooming gang story for their own purposes. People are accused of trying to make a name for themselves. But the fact remains, it is a massive scandal, and something must be done. You said you supported an inquiry. I mean, a lot of different kinds of inquiries have been suggested. Yeah. What kind of inquiry do you think there should be?
Well, the thing is, when you look at what's already been done, the J inquiry, it was pretty comprehensive in certain respects, but there's a clear issue here with grooming gangs. And I think what we need now is to ensure those recommendations, which many were being taken forward by the previous administration. Let's not forget, in 2023, there was specific units set up with the police. There were 500 perpetrators who were actually caught. There were about over 4,000 or 5,000 victims who were supported. And I think that's the heart of it, Mike. You've got to put the victims at the heart of what we do. And that includes those people who are not only survive these abhorrent ordeals, but can actually come forward and actually be part and parcel of trying to find the support they need. You know, if I can just draw a comparison, I said I served in government previously, whilst I was the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs. One of the areas I looked after was on preventing sexual violence in conflict zones. The heart of our approach there was not to stop, was to listen to the victims, listen to the survivors, put them at the heart of the strategy, but also important, the actions we were taking. And that was really informing myself as the minister responsible, but also ensuring there were practical solutions offered to those who need it most, which are the survivors of these abhorrent crimes. And I agree with you. I don't think this is a case of just because someone supports a national inquiry that somehow they're a racist, or indeed calling out a particular community or faith. It's about getting to the core and nub of the problem, and that's why I support something which is really focused on the grooming gangs to get the evidence base there so we can act beyond what is already being done.
Yeah, because one of the things that people do say has been a failing is that the victims weren't listened to. In many cases, victims went to the police and were completely ignored, and their cases weren't investigated. I mean, we've spoken to victims whose perpetrators never, ever were arrested and were never brought to justice. And so there's an awful lot that needs to be kind of, I suppose, cleaned up around the whole issue for the last 20-odd years.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, when you look at the inquiry, it put a 3-year limit on this. I, again, draw a comparison to an area that I worked in with victims of sexual violence in conflict zones. You know, if you've been a victim of any crime, I remember years and years ago, I was a victim of crime myself in my own home when people broke in. You know, I was a kid at that time. I was only about 13 years old. But it takes a time. It takes a long time. You need the support of your immediate people around you, but also the courage to be able to speak out, and you need to create the conditions to ensure that happens. And that's exactly why I'm supportive of that particular recommendation. Let's remove the limits on the 3-year limit. Let's allow survivors to be able to, you know, rebuild their lives, but then come forward to ensure these criminals are held fully to account. And I think that's why I believe in this kind of parallel approach. Let's continue to ensure, as Professor Jay has said, implement what's already there. But that doesn't stop us from having a really focused inquiry across the country on these issues of grooming gangs. We have the structure set up. You know, we have police and crime commissioners. Let's appoint specialists. Let's ensure the people who are dealing with the kind of calls which are very sensitive often and very personal are actually trained up to afford the support that victims and survivors need. And that's crucial. And let's also appoint these survivors who are coming forward and have the capacity and willingness to take part to actually find the practical solutions. Because if you've survived these abhorrent crimes, you're also well placed to inform government policy and indeed practical actions that need to be taken.
Sure. And why do you think Keir Starmer's so against the idea of having an inquiry?
Well, I mean, that's something for the Prime Minister to answer. I think, you know, it's not the right approach. It's almost bordering disingenuous when you say you can't have another sort of focused inquiry, which you know, there's people in the Labour Party who've said it, the likes of Andy Burnham, Harriet Harman, who I know extremely well. They've put forward ideas which I support, that they should be focused on the nub of the issue which now confronts us. Look, irrespective of who you are, where you are, our country is an incredible country. You know, I'm a really proud Brit. You know, I've also learned from my heritage and my faith, and we celebrate all of that. But irrespective of who you are, where you are, we need to not just call it out, but ensure there are practical measures in place and an evidence base so we can catch these criminals, hold perpetrators to account, and most importantly, put survivors first.
Yes, absolutely right. Well, let's see if pressure can be brought on Keir Starmer. There seems to be a belief that he's beginning to move his position slightly, as some of his MPs will have heard from their constituents over the course of the last few days, and maybe they will pressurise him to do so. Lord Tariq Ahmad, thank you very much indeed. British businessman and Conservative life peer.